Come on in, guys. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we'll be counting down the 10 Survivor players with the most votes cast against them in a single season, and what exactly they did to earn their tribe mates' ire. I figure with the 2020 United States election just a few short days away, and each candidate vying for millions of votes from the American voting populace, what better time to examine Survivor's own top vote getters? I mean, this is a game about voting after all. You know, now that I think about it, perhaps the campaigns should consult with some of these survivors, as they're experts in getting votes. Lots and lots of votes. Before we begin, it's important to note that these are intended votes, so votes negated by idols count, as do votes for people who've returned from Redemption Island or Edge of Extinction. It's simple. If your name was on the parchment and it was a vote to eliminate, it counts. So no final tribal council votes, obviously, because those were votes for a winner. Additionally, as I said at the top, these will be single season tallies only, so we'll save the total votes across entire Survivor careers for another day. Although you'll probably see some familiar faces from here whenever we get there. All that said, let's dig in to the 10 survivors with the often dubious honor of having the most votes cast against them in a single season, broken down conveniently into a top 5 because so many of these players have the same amount of votes. Starting at number 5, we have a 3-way tie between Eddie in Survivor Caramoan and Baylor and Keith in Survivor San Juan del Sur, who all accrued 16 total votes. Let's start with Eddie, an underrated favorite of mine, whom I haven't really had the opportunity to talk about until now. Eddie was a record-setting machine on Caramoan. Obviously, he's here, but he also holds the record for most times not voting for the person going home, as well as the record for most whimsical dream of what to do with the money.
If I do win the $1 million prize, I want to open like a dog kind of like shelter, kennel, playpen area, like attached to a bar. So like those are my two favorite things. I like dogs and I like bars. So if I could open a bar and like you just bring your dog there, that'd be unbelievable.
Eddie started on the Fans tribe and almost immediately joined the Cool Kids alliance of himself, Reynold, Hope, and Allie, a 4-person alliance in a tribe of 10. He caught 3 votes in a split vote early on between himself and Hope, but the other 6 fans aren't Russell fans apparently and didn't keep Hope alive. They kept Eddie alive. Eddie then failed upwards through much of the rest of the game, occasionally falling into alliances that were disbanded almost as quickly as they formed. Case in point, the 3 Amigos. Although Eddie played Malcolm's idol at the Phillip elimination and negated 4 votes against himself there, he quickly became the only Amigo left, and he stumbled forward towards the end game, catching votes nearly every round, but surviving on razor-thin margins each time. Yeah, Eddie was left out of pretty much every decision made by anyone not named Malcolm from like day 10 onwards. That out-of-the-loopness meant that even though Eddie was surviving day to day, he was almost always the decoy boot when the main alliance had bigger fish to fry, like when Andrea and Brenda were voted out. Eddie earned his last 3 votes at the final 4, eliminated unanimously by Cochran, Dawn, and Sherry, forever ending his dog bar dreams. Don't worry, Eddie, I've been to dog bars and they're not that cool. Baylor and Keith both matched Eddie's 16 votes just a few seasons later in San Juan del Sur. Baylor received most of her votes pre-merge, getting votes at 4 out of 5 pre-merge tribal councils she attended, but she always managed to wiggle out of those sticky situations. Baylor was perceived as, how do I say this charitably? Bratty by some on her tribe, so it's no surprise she was a favorite target in the early days of the game. And while she was the target at a number of pre-merge tribals for that very reason, at Coyopa's first tribal council, she wasn't at risk at all, but she was on the receiving end of one of my favorite Galaxy Brain plays ever, a lone vote from Josh, who threw a vote on her only so people wouldn't think that they're working together. Yeah, and I was only at that burlesque house to get instructions on how to get away from there. Baylor was the target of the minority alliance at the merge vote when Josh went home, but then rode with the majority the entire merge and didn't receive a single vote until her elimination at Final 5 when she was idled out by Jacqueline. You know who wasn't in the merge majority, though? Keith Nail. Louisiana's favorite son received only 3 votes pre-merge. 1 at the Drew boot because John didn't know what was happening, and 2 at the Dale boot as a decoy. That means he took a whopping 13 votes at a total 5 post-merge tribal councils, one of which where he accidentally idled out his own son. Whoops. Incredibly, Keith still hung around for 5 additional tribal councils after that, surviving each round by the skin of his spit, including a last-minute save from Natalie where she voted out Alec instead of him at the final 7. Keith, like Eddie, somehow ended up in the final 4, where, also like Eddie, he suddenly had winner equity, but he got nailed with 3 final votes from the final 3. What you think about that, Keith?
It is frustrating.
At number 4, we have another 3-way tie between Phillip in Redemption Island, Ozzy in South Pacific, and Wentworth in Cambodia, all with 17 votes apiece.
Fantastic! Love it!
We'll start with the specialist himself, who was a perennial vote getter at nearly every tribal council he attended, from his very first all the way to his very last. Phillip's episode 1 journey in and of itself is interesting. Initially part of Francesca and Christina's alliance against Boston Rob in one scene, and then suddenly Boston Rob's right-hand man in the next. Almost every vote Phillip received was due to his association with Rob. At pre-merge Ometepe because Rob was too valuable a challenge and camp asset to lose, and post-merge from Zapatera anytime Rob had immunity. He also just straight up annoyed Zapatera, so even when they knew they didn't have the numbers, they'd still throw votes his way on general principle. Phillip made it to Final Tribal Council, where he did get 1 vote from Ralph that we aren't counting, although technically that vote is for File. It's really easy to see why Phillip got so many votes. He just straight up annoyed people. In fact, Phillip and Baylor are the only people in this entire top 10 who didn't accrue a ton of votes in part due to idle plays or Redemption Island returns. They just got that many votes. The very next season, Ozzy would match Phillip's 17 vote record, although Ozzy's a pretty special case here since he was voted out a record-setting 3 times in one season, thanks to Redemption Island. And crazily enough, all 17 of Ozzy's votes came from just the 3 tribal councils he was voted out. The first of which he actually asked to be voted out and earned 5 votes from the rest of Savai'i. Ozzy intended to go to Redemption Island, win, and return at the merge, ensuring Savai'i would have even numbers against Upolu, so they had a fighting chance at the merge. Ozzy handily defeated Christine in the final Redemption Island duel and returned at the merge, but Cochran flipped and Ozzy followed Keith out the door to Redemption Island shortly thereafter, with a whopping 9 votes in episode 9, but not before showing what he thinks of Cochran on his voting parchment. Got him! Hanging out at Redemption Island, bonding with the other eliminated castaways before crushing them in a duel is honestly the ideal way for a major physical player and provider like Ozzy to play. So it's no surprise that when he returned to the game for a second time, he was all of a sudden a major jury threat. Ozzy tried to immunity his way to the end, as is his style, but at Final 4, Sophie came in clutch to stop him, and with Ozzy's Pleasure Dome shut down for health code violations, he went straight to Ponderosa.
We're probably also all going to have oral herpes.
What?
Herpes?
Why?
I'm sure somebody does. I mean, doesn't everybody have herpes?
What?
Fast forwarding to Survivor Cambodia, Wentworth didn't receive a single vote until day 21, when, she got a whole lot of them. 9 to be exact, all of which she negated in one of the best idol plays in Survivor history. Wentworth entered the merge on the outside of a massive buy-on alliance, which basically consisted of everyone except her, Cass, Abby, and Sierra. Cass was voted out at the merge, and although inner turmoil abound within buy-on between Steven and Joe and Savage and Fashion, the massive main alliance put all 9 of their votes on Wentworth at Final 12, which were promptly negated. Although she was constantly playing from the bottom as part of the Witches' Coven alliance, Wentworth only caught a few more votes the next episode as part of a failed split vote, and then managed to impressively narrowly survived vote-free until the final 6, when she again negated 3 votes with an idol, saving herself in a tribal council so confusing that Jeff had to bust out charts and crafts and go all Pepe Sylvia on us during the show just to explain what the heck happened. That idol play got Wentworth to the final 4, but with no immunity and no idol, she was voted out unanimously with 3 measly votes. Now that's Wentworthy of praise. At number 3, we have a two-way tie between Jen from Worlds Apart and Christian from David vs. Goliath, each of whom earned 18 votes in their time on the island. And then I promise we're done with ties. Jen was in a pretty solid position on Worlds Apart for the first part of the game, only getting 2 votes pre-merge from Vince and Nina at the No-Collar Tribe's first tribal council, a move born out of Vince's tumultuous hug affair with Jen and subsequent jealousy of her flirting with Joe.
I want to ask you a real human question.
Okay.
Do you feel more of a connection with Joe?
No.
If I can't have you, no one can. At the merge, Jen was in a rock-solid no-collar alliance with Joe and Haley, who picked up Shirin as a 4th. But it was them versus an equally solid blue-collar alliance, with the white-collar players stuck in the middle to decide which group to go with. Tyler and Carolyn sided with the blue-collar tribe over the no-collars because no shoes, no shirt, no alliance, and threw 7 votes Jen's way at the merge, which she negated with her immunity idol. But with no more idols, the no-collar alliance was then picked off one by one, with Jen getting 4 votes at Joe's elimination and then 5 votes at her own. There's not much more to say about Jen's game, honestly. She was just on the wrong side of the numbers and crushed underfoot by outside forces with far more resources and equity than her. Welcome to capitalism, Jen. In David vs. Goliath, it was similarly smooth sailing to the merge for Christian, who was universally beloved by his fellow castaways, the audience both casual and hardcore, the producers, domesticated and wild animals, and various deities. And for being so darn likable, Christian was the target at the final 12 tribal council, where the Goliath monolith threw all their votes on him, which Davey negated with an idol play in the now legendary tribal council where the David 5 split their votes from the minority. The Goliaths tried for a David do-over the very next vote, splitting their votes this time between Christian and Angelina, but that doesn't work out either because the Davids threw their votes on Dan, who plays an idol but which was nullified by Carl's idol nullifier. Christian is yet again the target a few rounds later, and this time the call is coming from inside the house. Christian's likability was his biggest liability, as even his closest ally Gabby tried to make a play against him at Final 7, but he played his own immunity idol this time and negated yet another 5 votes.
Christian does not count.
How'd you get that big brain?
Christian does not count. Christian
You're so smart.
does not count.
The very next round, though, at Final 6, Christian's fresh out of idols and takes his last 3 votes. Enough for one last Brochacho blindside. At number 2, we have Laura Moret in Survivor Blood vs. Water, with 19 votes to eliminate, although this one's got an asterisk on it. In Blood vs. Water, both tribes immediately voted someone off to Redemption Island, and Laura received 3 votes from Tyson, Rupert, and Candace, although this was not enough to send her to Redemption Island, yet. I am counting these votes, but even if we don't, Laura still makes the top 10. She's just down there with Eddie, Baylor, and Keith in the only got 16 votes slot. Come on, guys, step it up. Laura planned to massage her way to the top, but couldn't even massage her way to the swap, as the alliance of Tyson, Monica, Jervis, Tina, and Aris decided to forego an easy Laura boot and instead go for a slightly less easy Laura boot. But that only sent Laura to Redemption Island, where she beat Laura B and John to return to the game at the merge. Tribe kingpins Aris and Vetus wanted to send her right back to Redemption, but instead they were voted out back-to-back, but not before throwing a few more votes Laura's way at the final 11. By final 8 though, Laura's lost her footing with the majority and is in trouble yet again. She's voted out unanimously here, and even her own daughter Sierra casts a vote for her. She brought you into this world, and that's the thanks she gets? Notably, Laura's boot, partially courtesy of her own daughter, really kicks off the big moves era in earnest, paying off the blood versus water theme in ways the producers could only have ever dreamed of. Weird though, this was a pretty big deal. I feel like Jeff never brings this up.
Sierra! She voted out her mom!
At the time, this was a record-setting amount of votes to receive in one season, let alone 2 or 3. And for a long time, 19 votes seemed genuinely untoppable. Oh, how naive we were. Our highest single-season vote-getter, and someone who still ties for 10th place in total votes received across entire Survivor careers, despite only playing once, is Karishma from Survivor Island of the Idols. This is a truly monumental achievement for Karishma, at least as monumental as the literal monuments on her own season. Yeah, our Applebee's lovin', hand-cuttin' hot mess of a player received 22 votes to eliminate across season 39, and she only made it to the final 8. To put that in perspective, that's only 3 votes fewer than Boston Rob's career total, and he's played 5 times. Karishma was almost immediately on the outs at Lyro, but dodged a number of bullets pre-merge due to her own ability to play from the bottom and some big move-itis from her own tribe mates. She was at major risk at both the 3rd and 4th tribal councils, both of which she caught a handful of votes at. She survived a 3rd boot because Vince opted not to play his time-sensitive immunity idol, and survived the 4th because Missy decided that DK chillin' was DK flirting too much with Chelsea, so Chelsea had to go. Karishma was then swapped with her old tribe mates Tom and Dean, but immediately flipped to old Vokai to save her own neck. But not before she took a few more votes from Tom and Dean at this tribe's first tribal. Side note, can we talk about how great this group of swapped players is? Man, wish this group of people would have taken control at the merge. Karishma made the merge with her new alliance of unproblematic kings and queens, but they didn't have the numbers, and she took 3 more votes at the Jamal boot as part of a split vote. Karishma was then drafted into the GOAT army and quickly rose up the ranks.
Goat number 1, Karishma reporting for duty. Attention, goat number 2, Nora reporting for duty.
She must have read the Wentworth Book of Guerrilla Warfare or something, because she used an idol at Final 9 and negated a whopping 7 votes against herself. She then almost successfully led a coup against Tommy the next episode, but DK Benedict blew up her spot at Final 8 Tribal Council, where she got her final 5 votes and was sent home. It's hard for me to imagine someone ever breaking this single season vote tally, although if Survivor goes on long enough, they probably will. Still, Karishma's game really was the perfect storm of constantly being on the bottom, constantly being a tribal pariah, constantly part of a losing tribe, and success at finding advantages and having the right reads to play them correctly. Karishma's total vote tally is kind of impressive, both as a statistic and as a testament to her ability to survive in the game. Go drink a Shark Bowl, Karishma. You earned it.
I love Applebee's.
Got nothing else for ya. I know you're sick of hearing this everywhere, but if you're American and of voting age, please go vote. Until next time, don't get idled out.
Went 2 and 2.
You want that.